Greetings, Parish Orphans and Retrogrades. Timothy Gordon here. Retrograde numero uno. Coming to you today in a somber mood in the Advent season. I wanted to do a special kind of recollection show on my friend, who many of you know, John Morehouse, formerly with Tan Books, a great piece of the puzzle there. Died on December 5th, just before midnight. And this gives rise to some general rumination about the meaning of suffering during Advent, not just the meaning of suffering generally, because his wife, his widowed wife, and 5 children are now going through this with no uncertainty. There is suffering in Advent, and I'd like to talk about John for a little bit, his family, maybe solicit some donations to their GoFundMe account, and more generally, I'd like to make a remark or two on what are we to make of suffering during the Advent season. So in the first place, John was the acquisitions editor at Tan Books, one of the best long-standing, traditional-friendly Catholic imprints, publishing houses, and they're just a great company, and largely it's because John Morehouse, who died at 51, less than 48 hours ago, was such an aggressive, jolly, hyper-competent, and daring acquisitions editor. He went out and just, if I can relate this story, he came to me and he said, "We want a lot of books from you, Tim. We really like your daring. We like your young, masculine approach to Catholicism. We like that your young masculine approach to Catholicism is not anti-intellectual. It's masculine and simultaneously intellectual, and this is what we're going for." And the first thing I said to John when he was introducing himself to me years ago was, "Great, I'd love to do this, though some of my theses are genuinely politically incorrect, genuinely maybe frightening, even from a position of Catholicism, like feminism." And he said, "Bring it on." John was just a great, good man. He was a great, good man. Jolly every time I spoke to him. He is one of those rare souls that represents the ability to coalesce purity of principle. He was a hardcore Catholic, but he was jolly all the time, a little bit like Catholic Rush Limbaugh. Rush is always optimistic, but he is not selling principle short in order to achieve that optimism. That's what I knew of John Morehouse, who lots and lots of my friends, who I've never met, on Twitter are echoing. They're saying the exact same thing. John Morehouse was a beautiful man, a good man. We need to pray for his soul. Pray for his soul, because he was such a, as far as we know, a worthy candidate of heaven. But we need to pray for him now and pray for his widow. A jolly man who was simultaneously very audacious in terms of the books that he went out and contracted for Tan, and I was a direct recipient of this, as was my wife Steph. I spoke to John, who'd become a real friend, earlier in the day on either the 4th or the 5th, and I said, "Hey, I think I have another author for you." His first response was always audaciously, "Good. If you think they're good, let me go get them." So I'm just, when I heard the news that he had died suddenly at age 51, such a youthful guy, I heard it last night at dinner time, and I was really broken up, really shocked. So was Steph, who knows John as well. We were just really upset. We were celebrating my son's birthday, and it was just really hard. I guess he died late on Saturday, and I'd just spoken to him by text on Friday. It was jarring. What is man to do in the face of such reckless abandon, such sudden departure? Charles Dickens writes in A Christmas Carol that life is a series of meetings and partings. A series of meetings and partings.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
So it's really, really true that when someone parts so suddenly, one is left with things they want to tell that person. I'm not family to him. I'm a recent friend and a label mate, as it were. But I had a number of things that I wanted to say to John and could not because of the suddenness of the departures. It's a really serious thing. So first matter of business, I just want to say this so I don't forget. There is a GoFundMe for the Morehouse family. Please, they're trying to raise $150,000. They've already raised $38,000. People are looking for an alternative source of for a source for their donations, their donative intent. Please consider the Morehouse family as one of the very most worthy potential sources in their GoFundMe account, because when you do things the right way and you have 5 children and a wife and you're not averse to making money, but except you're trying to do so the Catholic way, working within the Catholic Church, it leaves real need in your sudden departure. 5 kids, many of whom are still young, are still younger than 18 in the Morehouse family. It leaves serious departure. John was just following the vocation in a really beautiful way. You know, chasing after that golden ring, heaven, with a wife and 5 kids, and not expecting by any reasonable estimation to be called by God so suddenly. So please pray for his soul. Pray for the reprieve of John Morehouse, and please do consider helping his family reach that $150,000 GoFundMe amount.
People are asking, they don't want to use GoFundMe. I believe you can send some checks to Tan Books. Just send
care of
John Morehouse to Tan Books. That's what was his publisher. So just look up Tan Books.
One thing I will say that's incredibly generous. Any way you give is generous, but when GoFundMe is being used for a decedent like John Morehouse, there's basically no chance that even a kind of evil clearinghouse company like GoFundMe will jeopardize the funds. He's a decedent. He died, and it's a collection for widows. GoFundMe is evil, but they're not that evil. And so do know that even though they're a strongly left-leaning organization who tried to put my money on freeze when I had a mini emergency, comparatively speaking, last summer, they will not do that under any reasonable estimation that I can make, but with regard to John's widow. So yeah, if you want to imposition yourself a little bit more and write a check and find and chase down the way to get it to him through Tan Books, then that's equally generous. But know that if you want to just take the quicker, direct internet route, you can get on GoFundMe, and those monies will not be jeopardized yet. I mean, the mark of the beast for Christians has not been instantiated to the point that you can't give to a Christian man's widow and 5 kids. Maybe in a year or two's time, 5 years, 10 years, they will be this explicit in their hatred for Christianity, but it's not to that point yet. So you should be safe giving to him. He was also the founder, John was, of Catholic Men's Quarterly. He's an exciting editor to have. From my perspective as a younger author, my wife's perspective as a younger author, several of my friends are authors on Tan Books. Ryan Grant, another good man, worked with him at Tan Books. Everyone was just energized by the fact that he's 51, which is young, and he was a young 51. He felt more like he was in his late 30s, like me. That's how we talked. We talked about politics, culture, of course, the faith all the time. We became very, very frequent texters and phone conversions. He was young, and he gave Tan Books a young energy because he wasn't afraid to put books out there like my wife's feminism book, for instance, that would create waves even within conservative or faithful Catholicism.
That was his idea.
Yeah, the book title was his idea. of Steph's forthcoming book on Tan, Ask Your Husband. That was, of course, her Twitter handle when she had a Twitter. And he came to me and he said, Tim, what do you say about using that Twitter handle for a forthcoming kind of women's companion piece to the book you and your brother are writing on Sophia? I said, I think this is a great idea. Let's see what Steph thinks. So Go Ask Your Husband. That was his idea, even though it was Steph's first as a Twitter handle. That kind of stuff, that's gutsy. That exemplifies chutzpah and Christian audacity of ages old. John had this in spades, and I'm glad, to be able to speak effusively without much negative emotion, because it was really shocking last night, and I don't care for that. I don't care for the public show of waterworks and all. It's wholly appropriate to friends and family of a recent decedent, but I'm happy to just be able to, from the intellect and also from the heart, tell you this man's family is such a great source of your charity in the Advent season and eventually in the Christmas tide. Please consider this giving to their GoFundMe account or other means you might have of connecting with the Morehouse family. Really, he was the great champion of the book Rules for Retrogrades, which was the product of our first conversation ever. He said, what ideas for books do you have, Tim? This is when I was still on Marshall's channel with TNT. And I said, well, I've always had this idea of a kind of list book of rules opposing radicals, rules for what I call retrogrades. Before that was the title of this show. It was the conception that John and I kind of worked up together for a book, and my brother Dave ended up writing half of the rules, and I wrote half the rules, and John just loved it. And anybody who ever met him will remark what a nice man he was. He hunted up Michael Knowles to get the forward written for our book, and you could ask anyone that met him once or many times, just the great combination, the Catholic combination of verve, vigor, audacity with the jolly, willing, fighting spirit, and he's just happy. He's just a happy man. So I'm also in great personal debt to him just for seeking me out, as he did with other younger authors. He was not a no guy. He was a yes guy, an idea guy. Sought me out, made Rules for Retrogrades a book. If that book didn't become a thing, maybe the show wouldn't have become a thing. So John Morehouse is really someone whose name will be honored in my household and with Steph. Not only was her book, which is forthcoming, Ask Your Husband, his idea, it was really our book Rules for Retrogrades as well.
I mean, I've never done any sort of big writing projects outside of just small articles, and so I can't even say how often he'd call or write and just try to encourage me along the way, and just really, even when I was considering writing the book, he really sat down with me for a good 30 minutes and just was, really giving me a pep talk on being a new author and what to expect and what to do. And I mean, he was just great.
Yeah, even with deadlines, if you have to fudge a deadline, other publishers aren't so nice. Of course, my only other official publisher, Sophia, is very nice about this, but I've heard horror stories from other Catholic publishers that are not so nice. If you're like, hey, John, one of more recent conversations I just had with him by text was, hey, the book's going to be about a half month later than I thought it would be. My forthcoming book on Vatican II, which will also be coming out with Tan in 2021. In addition to Steph's book, Go Ask Your Husband. And both books were a little bit behind deadline. He was just super, super nice. I guess I'm contrasting this. I want to keep this positive, but I'm contrasting it with the real world reality that even though the ideal is, Christian men should always be energetic, enthusiastic, full of vit and vinegar, full of fight, but happy warriors, this just isn't the case. This just isn't the case, and it's part and parcel of the problem of the lack of Christian masculinity in the church. So many guys that are traditional are kind of embittered and sort of have almost lost the fighting spirit. They've more assumed the complaining spirit and the backbiting spirit, the spirit of fragging, where they're not really trying to accomplish anything. They just want to be a remnant church and kind of just piss and moan about everything. That seems to be too much the norm on the conservative Catholic end of things. And a man like John, who's, half a generation older than myself, 12 years older than myself, provides a really, really good exemplar from our era of a man that is, a la G.K. Chesterton, a happy warrior, not complacent, but not bitter, not dour. John Morehouse, an excellent man. Again, please do see to the Morehouse family GoFundMe account. Can we put it up in chat?
I'm
link.
Putting the link up in chat. Do you want to say the name for people? It's called, I think, the Morehouse Family Support Fund.
Yeah, the John Morehouse Family Support Fund. I'm not trying to club you on the head with it, but we're trying to do some good here in the Advent season and in the Christmas tide. We didn't know what to say last night. We were celebrating our son's birthday and just eating. We each had a little cup of wine and we're, about to have cake after the dinner, but the kids were asking us what was the matter. It was just shocking. He was just so youthful in the best possible way that I didn't know what to say. I wanted to have one more. I sent him a text before I verified, John, I heard a terrible rumor. I hope it's not true. I don't know what else to say. It made for an odd evening because it was so sudden and stark. And the general principle is that there are lots of lonely people during the Advent season and the Christmas tide who are suffering in precisely such a way. They have been widowed. So I guess now I'm talking about Mrs. Morehouse and her 5 kids. Of blessed be God. They had a fruitful marriage and brought forth 5 kids to keep company and to protect their mother. There are some elder kids amongst them that are more like adults, but there are people as surprised and as lonely as Mrs. Morehouse is feeling now. And Christmas time and Advent is that appointed time by which we reflect on the incarnation of the divine word who entered time and place so that our sufferings might eventually be extirpated, be taken away. That's the meaning of things. He came in a time of the world before what we would consider modern medicine, or even any time prefiguring modern medicine. He came in a time of the world when the human lifespan was something closer to half of what we enjoy now. We expect to have about 80 years, all of us. And by providence, Christ came in a time 2,000 years ago when sufferings were rampant. He came to a part of the Roman Empire where sufferings and persecution was rampant. Under the Romans, and before that it had been under the Babylonians, and before that it had been under the Greeks and the Persians. So Jesus came, and this is what the angel Gabriel said to Mary at the Annunciation. This is the subtext anyway. Are you willing to suffer for the sake of the only greatest good, greater good, which really matters? Are you willing to be the mother of God, the Theotokos, on behalf not only of yourself, on behalf not only of your son who will be God, what a concept, but on behalf of the entire suffering world who groans out for a Savior? And through the grace of God, she said yes. But I mean, you could get caught up in this language, which is a little bit more typical, and taken out of the reality, the day-to-day reality of the fact that it's also a jolly time of year, a time when you're warmed by your family and your friends, and having time off of work, and having little niceties, little creature comforts like, wine or whiskey, and good food and a warm hearth and Christmas movies and whatever you're into, whatever your family's Christmas traditions are, that, in an imperfect, vague way, reflect the joy that's instantiated by Jesus' coming to earth, right? And so we do it in these day-to-day ways, which are far less meaningful, but far more relatable than the philosophy or the theology of the incarnation. And in that way, the ostensible joys of Advent and Christmastide become like a dagger, not a solace, but more like a dagger to the recently widowed, or to the long thereafter widowed. I mean, anyone who's really loved and lost reflects the same sentiment, that they feel like the holidays are a bit harder because they used to enjoy them so much with their beloved. They're bereaved of their beloved, and so that solace becomes like a little dagger in the heart. This movement of the hearty, the jolly, becoming a kind of dagger, a kind of pain, a new kind of suffering around Christmas time of the recently bereaved, is a pale inflection, a kind of reflection of the idea that Jesus came to earth, which is a joyous event. God became man in the one true faith, Roman Catholicism, in order to die. Right? It's a good that is instantiated through a bad. The meaning of Christmas is ultimately ordered to the meaning of Good Friday, which is ultimately ordered to the meaning of Easter, right? Christmas is important because of Good Friday, and Good Friday is perfected through Easter. So it's a good that comes across, seems to be terminated in a bad on the cross with Jesus, between the two themes, which is itself reaches its full terminus in Easter. So the way you'd put this is you take the good with the bad. And at Christmas time, at Advent, there's this kind of inflected meaning where it's supposed to be a good thing, a fully good thing, but it becomes a pain to those who miss someone, which is so many people out there. I mean, everyone misses someone, but I'm talking about the unique community, unique brotherhood of people that are missing somebody very, very close to them. Think of this. I'm trying to give a conceptual way of going forward. Think of this as a way of capturing the more abstruse, the more dense, bad with the good that we take in the incarnation. Christmas, Good Friday, Easter. When we reflect on Christmas, of course, we reflect on Good Friday and Easter indirectly. And therefore, when you reflect on all the goods of Christmas, there's a lacking, a paucity, a privation of the good that you would otherwise be sharing with someone you miss. And that creates legitimate sorrow. So the Morehouse family is feeling this, and it's a community, a brotherhood, a sisterhood among the widows of the world that Mrs. Morehouse has now joined. And lo and behold, 3 days ago, when the weekend began, last time I spoke to John by text was on Friday. She never thought she would enter it so young, maybe in 30 years. God bless all of you people. Remember, we're always talking about the need for a new donative intent, because we can't give to so many of our parishes because we don't think the money will be spent wisely. We'll allow this to supplant the erstwhile intent until it comes back, until you, or maybe you're one of the few that can trust, the church with your money. You're at a good parish. Well, until then, this is a great source for your money. Please go to the John Morehouse Family Support Fund. Help everyone. Suffering has meaning. We can help to adequate it on the other end. Those of us who have not had a sudden sorrow this Advent, This is how you support the church, by supporting the widows of great good men like John Morehouse. Thank you guys very much. Different kind of show today. Yeah, comment below if you have any relevant stories, you want prayers or even donations, for similar kinds of stories. God bless you all. We'll see you in a couple of days. God bless you, and please pray for the family of John Morehouse and the soul of John Morehouse. Have a good day.